just made a huge, a massive discovery. It's starting a vodka. Oh, thank you. That was interesting. Well, I'll move the projector.
Okay, and we are live. Yeah, so, well, Matthew. Oh, no, you do. I think you might get me to introduce basically.
I'm sitting here because I'm sat in my place because I'm on that.
Go, Matthew.
I'd love to get up.
You're very welcome. We're very happy to have you here.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, I'll introduce myself from the chair.
There we go.
I'm sort of looking at the frame there, but I'm really conscious of my image now on the screen.
Chair, what can you hear if I can?
Okay,
right.
right.
Sound check and then, yeah.
Right, we off?
Yes.
Right.
Don't worry about technology, just go.
All right, okay, right. So, I am Matthew Adams. I have been working with Elizabeth the last couple of years, and last year we set up a community interest company called Growing Real Food for Nutrition, which is GRIFFIN for short. And the idea is to learn how to grow and measure and promote the benefits of nutrient-dense food. Ooh, you see the place is filling up with food already, that's nice. Yeah, well, I'm going to start on that very question. Sorry, well, Elizabeth, you're going to introduce yourself. You might be known by now, I'm not sure, but...
Oh, hang on, you're sitting in this place. Well, I'll just be like the voice. Be the voice off camera.
Here we go.
Okay. So I look very small.
Standing on a chair.
Yeah. So, yeah, hello everyone. So I'm Elizabeth Westaway, Dr. Elizabeth Westaway, international public health nutritionist, and worked a lot in developing countries. It was during, I was working for the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN, overseeing a nutrition sensitive agriculture project. So you had, so Malawi and Cambodia were included in this project. And it got me very interested in the links between agriculture, food quality, nutrition and health. Because with the term sort of nutrition sensitive agriculture, it's very much trying to, I suppose, get over the fact that you have to start considering nutrition and health in your decisions around what you plant, what you grow, and then how you grow it. So in Malawi, for example, it was just very much monoculture, tobacco or maize, high input. I mean, they were killing the soils, grow cash crops for export, and then the farmers didn't get much money from that, and they were having to buy their own food, which was ridiculous. So it's trying to sort of change the way that the smallholder farmers operated, and at the same time giving caregivers of young children in the weaning age the knowledge, skills, competence and confidence to just diversify their family diet slightly. So in Malawi, for example, they live basically on a very bland maize-based porridge. In Cambodia, it's a very bland rice-based porridge. So just by adding a little bit of fruit, a little bit of veg, and a little bit of fish, couldn't really necessarily afford the meat, but just to improve the nutritional content, the idea of reducing the prevalence of stunting, which in both countries it's a massive problem, particularly in the under fives. So a colleague in Malawi, she mentioned the permaculture word. I'd never heard of it. That was in 2014. So even though I've worked, in this sort of food security, nutrition, health, touching on agriculture, clearly I was in a totally different sort of paradigm, because I should have come across it really. Never did. And it was in 2016 that started exploring permaculture, and it's like light bulb moments going off, just connecting everything. It was marvellous. So really sort of fell in love. I've fallen in love with permaculture, and it's now trying to mesh, the interesting experience I've got to try and help to transform the food and farming system. That's how I'm sort of wanting to contribute to this transformation. So yeah, I've been attending the Oxford Rural Farming Conference, because that's like an amazing 2-day conference. If you ever get the opportunity to go, snap up the tickets as soon as they come out. You don't hang about. And you know, when it's face to face, it's in Oxford. You have about 1,500 people who are all wanting to transform the food and farming system. So it's a fabulous 2 days. Packed, you know, really like global experts who do stuff, you know, experts in Europe and the UK, networking opportunity, and it's fabulous. And everybody says it's a great way to start the year. You know, set the off really well. So in 2019, this is where I came across Matthew. We sort of collided. And it was in a session run by Andy Goldring, who heads up the Permaculture Association. He's been doing work around a very interesting project called Control Shift, an emergency summit for change. And the session was about looking at wicked problems. So one of those, thinking of solutions, so very permaculture, and one of them was around how to ensure like healthy and sustainable food within the food system. And I sat down, and then this man next to me was starting to talk about nutrient density, food quality, and how to measure it. And literally my jaw hit the floor, because I've been talking about that, and I haven't really come across anybody who was talking about that. And this is, you know, it's just too good a synergy to not do anything with. So we've been collaborating more or less ever since.
Definitely, brilliant.
So, yeah. So I'll stop there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got to get myself back in frame.
Yeah.
Not that I'm vain or anything, I'm just worried about anybody zooming.
No.
So, actually, I just give it a quick skimming background of me. I'm a mechanical engineer by trade. Peeled off and did a holistic environmental management degree, got right into nature, spent 9 months working for the Somerset Wildlife Trust, spent 3 months in the Amazon rainforest, just absorbing myself in nature. Came back, did my final year around deep ecology, which is a deep green environmental philosophy. Off the back of that, I ended up running a gardening charity for 11 years. It was called the Good Gardeners Association. Since 1966, they've been promoting no-dig, compost, organic gardening. And so I inherited that organisation, ran it for 11 years. There was already at that time a growing interest between the relationship between how we treat the soil and the quality of the food that comes out of that soil. So that was obviously a focus on nutrition. I created a project in partnership with the Biodynamic Association and an educational trust. I've spent 8 years looking at this linkage between the soil and the crops and asking the general question, what is nutrition? Because I think today it's still a valid question to ask. I don't think it's by any means nailed. So that remains an ongoing question for me, is what is nutrition? I might touch on that as we go through. So I mentioned the word nutrient density. So before we go any further, what does that mean to anybody? Are you all comfortable with that term? Do you kind of...
Yeah, I mean, does it mean how many nutrients you get in a square inch of vegetable?
Yes.
How dense those nutrients are all packed together is what I'm imagining.
Right.
It'd be more like a carrot, I assumed, in per square inch of carrot. You know what I mean? Yeah. Of the same weight sort of thing.
Yeah, we'd love to have your definition.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm loving it. I'm loving hearing it. This is great. Yeah, no. Yeah.
What do you think it means?
Vitamins and minerals in the vegetables.
Yeah.
The nutrient density.
Yeah.
What's it referring to?
Yeah, to, you know, well, I think vitamins and minerals, but I probably could be wrong.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly got something to do with that. It's got to do with, for me, I would say nutrient density is yet to be properly defined. And this work that we're getting involved in, hopefully we'll get to a better understanding. But the way that I'm using, the concept I'm using, it reflects how well a plant has been grown in harmony with natural systems. And when a plant has access to all its nutritional needs, then it can grow unhindered into a plant that is potentially completely resistant to pest and disease, that increases yields, that tastes better, and has a longer shelf life. And to me, that is a vision of total health. If you can produce a plant with total health, then obviously a plant goes through an ecosystem, a food chain. And so unless you've got a plant with total health, you will never promote health through the food chain. So that's my concept, that's my understanding, that's the working concept that I'm working with. It's a vision of total health. And if we look at the picture here, I mean, we've got the bitty thing in the way, but this is a symbol that I've created to try and reflect two different views of nutrition, or in a way, two different worldviews. So on the left, we've got where we are today. That's an accountant pushing NPK up into the roots of the plant. Yes, so the majority of food that is produced today is dependent on human inputs and mollycoddling. That's good. And it's a misunderstanding of nature and how nature works, as far as I can see. So it's all about separation from nature and controlling nature. So we're trying to control how plants grow. We think we know how this bit works. So in our attempt to control things, of course, we've created a lot of pollution and ill health. And you can see the fruit that the plant's producing is pound note signs. You know, it's all about that. At the moment, the quality of the plant is all about pound notes. And so the whole economy shifts around that. And I think because of that, we've lost sight of something very important. So on the right-hand side is a vision of where we want to go. So we've got now people cooperating. So we're cooperating with each other and with nature. We've got the life coming back into the soil. So we've got microbes coming back into that system to work with that plant, to give it all its nutritional needs. And the fruit that's hanging down on the plant on that side is a heart. So it's about love. You know, it's a paradigm shift to move towards there. And so that's kind of creating a vision of the future. You'll notice there's no pollutants or hospitals in the background. So if you've got a plant that represents total health in an ecosystem, then there is a question about what the healthcare system is that we currently, we accept ill health as a factor of life, and I honestly question that. You know, it's the paradigm that we're actually in, and I'm just pushing it out there a little bit here. You know, so that's possibly a vision of the future. That's where things could go if we aligned ourselves to step back into natural systems and realign ourselves with natural systems, back into nature. And so that brings us right back to nutrition and understanding nutrient density and what's leading us on to measuring it. So I'm now going to flip through, I might need to flip through.
Your son drew this.
Yes, my son drew this, yeah.
Image.
Yeah. A picture, you know, says 1,000 words. And
I think it really typifies what you're talking about.
Right,
Yeah.
good.
How old is your son?
23. He's just finishing.
Right.
Just finishing his art degree.
Right, that's cool.
Yeah. How do I move the slide?
Just go left.
How do I move the slide? What? The down arrow, is it?
It is, yeah. So it is
Oh yeah.
left and right.
Left and right. Okay. Right. I better quickly skid through this because now I've got left and right visions. So that vision on the left, what is nutrition? Well, it's on the side of a packet. That's what nutrition is, isn't it? On the right-hand side, what is nutrition? Oh, it's a plant. It's roots. It's microbes. It's organic. It doesn't conform to the packet. And this is what we're going to find out, that nutrition is not static. it's organic. So it means, if we grow apples here, they'll be different to apples grown in Gloucestershire, because there's a different soil, there's a different climate, it's a different setup, and the nutritional quality may vary. So this packet does not allow for individuality. This allows for homogeneous, kind of cloned food types. So just want to point that out. This is a quote from Elsie Widdowson. She was a wonderful scientist. She did lots of work around nutrition. She wrote the chemical composition of food tables, which has become the standard document in which we now refer to that we've lost a lot of minerals, because every 10 years it catalogues mineral content of the foods that we eat. And she was interviewed on Radio 4 one day, and I heard her say this. And so, she's pointing out, most people think they know about nutrition, it's just food, isn't it? It's just I have 5 a day, job done. But she's saying it's much more complex than that. When you get into nutrition, it's far more complex than that. And she summed it up as it's about the whole well-being of everybody. And so that comes back to that picture. How we understand nutrition can affect the whole well-being of everybody. So here we are, just United Nations working out how to feed the world, and then there's a farmer actually feeding the world. So I just skip that. So that's my funny picture. We're all looking in the wrong direction. So for the last 400 years, it's talked about quite a lot. Went through this paradigm shift of worldviews. We ran into the reductionist worldview. We now see the world as a machine. And haven't we done well? After 400 years of thinking like that, when you just reflect on the health of the soil, the biodiversity, I don't need to tell anybody that these days. We all know and feel it.
It sounds like you've read Elvis Avery's book on domestic management.
I have not, but that's interesting, because that means there's an aligning.
Your language and use of things, and if you read it, you'd probably be like, yeah, I've written this. I recommend it.
Oh, brilliant.
Can we encourage you to talk a little bit more directly to them?
Okay, right.
Okay, so
where it
we just come around.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
Technical adjustment.
We're trying to be in 2 places.
Technical adjustment, yeah. Okay, so this worldview is not doing so very well. I was captured by this when I started doing my environmental degree. Environmental crisis, what crisis? It's a crisis of the mind. Fair enough. Yeah. Right, I'm going to lose my animation here. I'm getting nailed in a box.
It's taken me a couple of days to get used to it.
Okay. Right, let's flip back here. So here we are, 2 different rows. Right, what's in a plant? We know there's a lot of chemistry in there. 80% water, 18% are made up of those 5 elements, which together form carbohydrate, protein, fats, and vitamins. But there's 92 naturally occurring chemical elements in the world. They don't all exist on land. A lot of them exist in the water as well. But it's suggested that the rest is all the mineral and trace minerals that are present in the soil, and somehow they're used by a plant to make itself healthy. They are needed by a plant, and they're also needed by us. So here's a question that's not asked that often: is how is a plant made? What makes a plant grow? So we talk about examining what is a plant, but how does it actually grow? So this is very, a fundamental question, which has actually been asked along the years, and it's gone from a simple thing of it's just air and water mixed together, and now it's gone into it's nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus, and we still haven't really quite shifted on from the chemical understanding that it's somehow it's some chemical reaction. So standard sciences, we've got the biology and the physics hovering around saying, well, we might have something to do with this. So we now know that the interaction between a plant and the biology in the soil is really important. And in fact, from the old paradigm that the plant growth is limited to the least available nutrient, which is a 150-year-old theory brought around by Professor Justus von Liebig, a German professor, a German scientist, who was asked by a conglomerate of businessmen to determine what makes a plant grow. So, so this is the whole story now of chemical agriculture. So the science was done, and he determined, well, it was just a few elements. It was nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. And that really sparked the wheel towards moving to a kind of chemical-based agriculture. I perhaps shouldn't get stuck there other than to say the scientist did repent upon his deathbed in 1899. It is recorded in the Encyclopedia Britannica that he committed a sin in his experiment because he understood actually that it was more than just the chemistry. But the genie was out of the box by then, so it got adopted by, well, it went off, well, we know the story of chemical agriculture. So biology is actually turning out to be more important than chemistry. So they're both important. But I would now suggest the limiting factor of what makes a plant grow is the biology. The nutrients are there, the chemistry is there, it's the living life force, the biology that is missing.
And that's just an acknowledgement of the complexity within a plant, because the actual division between physics, chemistry, biology is entirely along the rule of law. It's not like in the real physical world there's like some line between the two. It's all just reality.
It's all working together.
Because biology is the most complex, interrelated one of the sciences. It's kind of just a way of saying that we know that it's more complicated than we usually. We can't put all the building blocks together.
That's an interesting one, because I think we get lost in complexity, and actually there's a simple message in front of complexity, and that's the bit that we keep not seeing.
It's complicated and complex as well. Two different things. Complicated things we design and try to understand, and they take a lot of input to try and get your head around. And then it's complex, which is like naturally self-sustaining and systems that work together by themselves as well. There's a distinction between them being complex and complicated, like nature's complex, but modern industrial agriculture is complicated. Right,
thank you. So the other thing I want to bring to everybody's attention, which is probably up to speed with anyway, but energy. So biology, energy, and chemistry, I believe, make a plant grow. This is a picture from one of John Kemp's lectures recently. I don't know a whole lot about this, but it's a fascinating story and it's worth finding out more, because it explains how 90% of mineral elements in the soil first are eaten by a microbe. And that microbe makes that mineral biologically available to the plant. And this I can't even say it. You say it. Thank you. That cycle. The plant root is actually consuming the microbe that has eaten the chemical element that the plant now needs. So it's brought through the root hairs and brought into the plant. And it helps to kind of illustrate that importance of soil biology. And it helps to also mix chemistry with biology, because the chemistry alone could be inert, but once it's been consumed by a single-celled organism, it now becomes biologically available and active. So it's kind of positively charged, if you like. And the plant can use that, and the plant loves that and can take that up and utilize that to satisfy its needs. Physics. Lovely quote by Nikola Tesla. You all know Nikola Tesla was a famous scientist who did a lot of work around energy and truth. So you read that quote, and because I'm not going to read what's written on the slide. So I think the future of understanding plants and nutrition is lying in biology and physics, particularly energy and chemistry. It's bringing it all back together is one thing. But we don't tend to go there. We tend to be stuck on mostly the chemistry. So it's good that the biology is opening up. And then I think beyond that, it's the energetics. Skip past that. I'm going to skip past that. Here we go. Let's get straight into measuring food quality. So this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
So Exhibit A, thank you very much. Now I could play the little video, but I'll explain a little bit first. Yeah. So how do we measure food quality? It was suggested back in the 70s by Dr. Kerry Reams that actually you could use a BRIX refractometer, and that could be used to give you an indicator of food quality. So we're now talking about the amount of nutrients that are in that plant. And the refractometer, which is this device here, it's so simple. I mean, that is the only moving part. It's the lid on the top. There's no batteries. It's just like a telescope. You look through it. And when you look through, you'll see a scale. And this scale is 0 to 32. It's called the BRIX scale, B-R-I-X. And it's measuring the total dissolved solids. So when you get a plant, what you do is you cut a piece of the plant and you crush it with your pliers. You've got your sap pliers. Got a pair. I have another pair here. That should be playing around with it. There you go.
I got those into the Welsh Senate, I believe. I'm security, and I had to speak to the security guard, but you let me in.
So this was generation 1 pair of pliers that I made up. So these are just sap pliers. So what you can do,
Do a lot of damage to Boris Johnson.
yeah, shake his hands. So what we need is 2 or 3 drops of plant juice to put onto the lens of the refractometer. So if I can do this for you. So these are locking pliers. So they're, once you close them, they're sort of under pressure, and hopefully this kale will yield a few drops of juice.
It's particularly for like the leafy vegetables, I think you really need a lot of force.
Yeah,
to get
right.
a few drops on
Yeah. And sometimes, I mean, some samples have been so, I can see it just coming in there. Be patient. Be patient.
Any particularly bright light then? Or?
Yes, it does need to be held up to the light, and so I've got a torch which I can use. Or see other thing. There we go. Right, I'm just getting a few drips there. Am I on camera? Amazing.
Overwintered kale. So
Yeah.
See what it is.
Right, so there we go. You can see the drops going on, and that's it. So that's now covering the lid, and I've got kale juice everywhere. Okay, and then I look through the scale, and I need a torch to see. No, I just about it. Right. Okay, it's not a very well. Some definition. That's better with a close. Right. Okay, so are we allowed to hand it round?
Yeah.
Sure, of course we are.
Okay, well, you can put a piece of tissue down. So look through there, and you'll see a blue line meets a white line, and where that intersects,
Yes.
you'll see the numbers going up the middle.
Yeah.
So if you read me out the number, then I know if you've got it right.
Well, I think it's saying 13.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah. It's between.
Yes, if
You look
have a
towards the
look-see
screen,
through
you can
that.
see a bit of light, and then you can see it.
It's sometimes you get a much clearer definition
yes,
between
yeah.
a blue line and
Yeah.
a white line, and sometimes it depends on the veg you're testing.
And how does that compare to? Is that a good level of?
Well, we'll get into that.
Oh, I see.
With fresh kale, as opposed to kale that's been overwintered from last year, you know,
I would imagine that that's.
from March last year.
I think it's more nutrient dense.
Yeah, do you think?
I think so.
Can we?
Longer
Is it
extent.
requiring more?
Yeah, I think I'd imagine.
And I think it's, yes, because this is sort of lower
So it's-
content. It hasn't, it's sat there in the winter sort of city, so.
So we've got
Brilliant.
fresh one this
I love
year, and then we've got that, so it'd be interesting to compare.
Well, yeah.
That's raw kale. That's from outside. This is from inside the greenhouse. This is some lettuce that's just grown, so that's very new.
Yeah. Okay, so we explain it a minute.
And that's
But it's such an interesting.
spring greens, you know.
Yeah.
Delicious.
Yeah.
They're beautiful.
Are you the growth?
Well, actually, Steph's growing. But yeah, I'm growing as well now. But this is from Steph's earlier work. Yes, I think.
That's really
I
nice.
have loads, yeah.
There's a
If
correlation
you could
between
pass
that.
on, because I'm a bit sniffly, so I don't want to like sniffle all over. I do want to see what other
So once you're all looking at that, what you do once you get your number is you use the BRIX tables to find out how it relates to the suggested quality. And I don't know how well you can see that. There's a list of fruits and vegetables, and then there's 4 columns, and we've got poor, average, good, and excellent. So you take your BRIX value. And what was it? We got 12 or 13?
Yeah, 13, yes, 13.
So consensus 13. Now, kale, I don't think it's on that table, and I've got it here, and I think I've used cabbage because this list of vegetables is not exhaustive. It doesn't capture every single thing.
No.
And we're in a zone of slightly sort of families rather than specific varieties and things.
Yeah, right.
So we can use similar vegetables to get a reflection. So on this chart here, I've listed that as kale, and this is excellent kale. Do you know what? I'm dead impressed.
You impressed?
I'm super impressed.
Excellence.
Yeah.
This is the first piece of kale that I've tested that is excellent. So, who grew the kale? Do you want to tell us the story?
Wow, Stephanie.
I just got some seeds tonight. I've been.
Oh, well, that's perfect.
The
That's perfect.
And the soil, yeah.
The soil's been worked
We
on
grew lots
so
of
much.
things in one bed as well. We don't
Yeah.
just have one thing growing.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of co-planting. And
Right.
we had bones, munched up bones to the soil, and we've got seaweed on the soil before.
How long have you been building it up? Over how long?
That's the third year of the garden.
Gardens have had many incarnations over the years, and that's, you've got it in the best arrangement, but it's all more or less the same soil that's been
That's
shunted
it.
around
It's getting more complex every year. Isn't it?
Yeah,
now
it's
you've got it
increasing.
how you want it. You won't be shoving it around, so it's only going to get better. But you built on a legacy of good soil anyway.
Well, that's fab. I mean, we've got a lot of clay in our soil naturally.
Yeah.
We've got some nutrients in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we add manure to it and all sorts because we've got
Yeah.
an abundance of nutrients around us. So
Yeah.
Do your ducks?
Yeah.
Do your ducks like?
You can't really get into a lot of the beds, but you can get into the 2 top beds.
So we use their manure.
We use the manure, so
Yeah,
Jess has been collecting all the straw and stuff.
Of course, it's not, I mean, you're talking nutrients, but it's also the biology that's going in there as
Yes,
well. So
yeah.
if it's well composted manure, it's because of the biology. If you got,
You're in the habit.
yeah.
And then what variety of kale is it though? Is it like a traditional variety?
I'm not sure. I think that one was the brothel. So I don't know if it's a
Yeah.
fashion variety.
Have you all tasted a piece of the kale? Is it
It does taste
Really
great.
good. It's really peppery.
because this is the thing. I mean,
Yes,
it's
tastes
suggested
amazing.
it suggested that the higher the BRIX value, the better the taste. Now, I am still tasting that kale. in
Yeah,
my
it's
mouth.
very
It is-
You're right.
there's an aftertaste that's ringing.
Yeah.
I've definitely got a sense of, yes, it's kale.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Heaviness.
it's not watery.
No.
You know, it's really well balanced.
Yeah.
What happens to the nutrients and when it gets cooked?
We don't know. Well, we do know that, you know, but that's another story.
That's complex because some become more available and some become less available. So you're transforming it.
Yeah.
One of the reasons you cook food is to make it more digestible. So,
Yeah. I'm talking with a lady who's she's authored a book called Food Wise, and she's now talking about the effect of heat on food. And you know, I think it's all related. We've all got this impression, but cooking on an open fire creates a different sort of heat. Cooking in an oven is a different sort of heat, and then obviously a microwave, I don't know what that is really. So, you know, there are all ways of cooking food that could add nutritional quality or remove nutritional quality. But we're still stuck really at the plant level of trying to understand the plant level nutrition.
Is steaming vegetables, do you think, a better way of doing it? I mean, that's what they
It sort of feels right to me.
feels
I've
right,
been
doesn't it?
steaming vegetables. I'd rather do that than in a great big pot of water, because
Yes,
I know
yes.
that nutrients can leach out into
Yeah,
the water. If you drank the water, then you could
Maybe,
say
yeah.
that maybe, but
Juicing it, yeah. Actually, we juice that.
so that was an amazing success, and we should do I mean, we could do the lettuce is going to be interesting.
The lettuce, let's see
Right.
what lettuce is. Have we got lettuce on that chart as well?
Yeah, I've got lettuce here, and I've not ever found anything above poor.
Above poor?
Yeah, according to the BRIX
Right.
thingy.
Prepare to be amazed.
Yeah, that's
J cloth.
That's from this year, that's,
This is from this year in the greenhouse.
Yeah, only just fresh and cooked as well.
So it depends who's
So-
overwintered.
What, do you want to pop that in there?
Yeah, give it a
crusher and
push it.
get that crushing?
Where have you been testing
Um,
other kale soils from? What other kales have you been using?
Sorry?
Where have you been getting kale?
I wanted to drip and waste the drip.
From growers of
Does it run out pretty fast? Or?
It was quite hard to get where
I did a mini.
you put it directly onto the lens, I think.
Yeah.
Is there anything coming?
Does it take a minute?
No, you've got pressure.
Well, I've closed it as much as it will go. It's locked shut.
So there are.
Perhaps can tighten it up. I don't know.
Yeah, so maybe
There
put
are
it down here,
pitfalls
so that, and then it should stop. Where's the device?
Oh yes, there's some juice coming.
Yeah. So don't lose that. We need the root.
Right.
You know, the
juice is coming now. I don't want
It's
to
got all good.
Yeah.
Let me just try this.
No, that's actually, does
If I,
this result actually correlate with like it being better?
do that, then I can.
Right, yes.
Sit there.
You carry
And
on.
then you've been a master squeezer. I can possibly. Oh, I think it might be on the next slide. So the thing to point out here, this is a super simple technique, and it's very crude, and there are pitfalls. When you start testing a living plant, then the BRIX level will go up and down in a day, because high sun, more photosynthesis. So when you're testing, you might want to be testing in the morning before 10 o'clock, for example, or in the evening after 4 o'clock. That's in the field. But it creates a super simple way of getting to this idea that food quality could be related to its relationship with the biology and the chemistry and the
You
physics.
see it on there. So.
And this simple measurement helps to sort of get you there. Oh,
We've got some juice on there. Can you see it? Is that enough?
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So it's just the juice. We don't want any plant material.
Need a drum roll.
Yeah.
You should write a few couple more.
Let's go to the Eurovision Song Contest.
Oh!
Our survey says.
Right, read it off.
Somebody read it.
It's measuring refractive index, is it?
Six.
To water.
Like that says a
Yes,
6.
if you, yeah. If
No, no,
you-
that you agree. 6.
If you calibrate the device, you can just use water. So it's measuring the dissolved solids. So in water there are no dissolved solids. So if you put water on the lens, you'll read 0.
Yeah.
So what we're doing with the plant juice, it's now got it's got all these dissolvable solids in there. So it's carbohydrate, it's vitamins, it's soluble nutrients.
That's actually right on the mark
So-
as well.
You say 5.5?
Well, it's certainly for 5.
Yes, yeah. What do you think? What matches?
I was sort of 5.5, 6.
Yeah, I thought that.
Yeah.
So how does that compare? Is that good?
That's very
Or is that beyond more? I'm
Right.
sort of nervous.
I know. Sit down.
Give me the result.
Right. It's actually, according to this, it's poor.
That's true.
Really?
Oh.
Okay, but I will
It's average.
for lettuce.
On the BRIX table, it says average. So
Oh,
it's
sorry.
average.
Ah, no, it is average. Yeah, I've just spotted a mistake on my phone.
But
I apologise to your lettuce.
but that's less
Yeah, that's true.
I've got one other 6 here.
Would lettuce ever achieve 32? Is that the different vegetables?
No,
inherently-
so that's a good point, because let's I'll sit here and go. If you look, each vegetable type has its own set of values. Some of them are the same, but it means if you look at there's raisins are on here, for example. The raisins are completely sweet, aren't they? So their value is what, 60, 70, and 85 or something. So it totally depends on the plant that you're testing, and these scales have been worked out relative to those plant types.
If you were to look on a plant that is inedible, will it show up as being nutritious in any way whatsoever?
Good question. So when some people try and use it in the field, if you've got the plant you're trying to grow and a plant that you don't want to necessarily be there, let's call it a weed, but indicator plant, sorry, would be a better word. Then living plant, if you test the leaves of those living plants, I haven't done this myself yet, but it could tell you that the indicator plant that you don't particularly want there has got a higher BRIX value on the leaf than the plant that you do want there.
Yeah, right.
Which means that you've created the perfect soil for growing this indicator plant that you don't necessarily want.
Yeah, right.
So that's feedback loop to you to say, okay, so what do we do here?
Right.
The soil, if I want to grow my lovely kale, then I need to think, what do I do?
Right.
So
And will this information give you that indication as to how to alter your soil to do that?
That's then down to you to understand the soil. Right? This is offering you the feedback as a measure of your own success, if you like.
Right, yeah.
And in a way of kind of self-certifying what you're doing.
Yes.
Which is exactly the theme of what we were talking about today, is feedback loop. So
Yeah.
that evidence then is steering you.
Yeah, right.
Use a metaphor of how you balance a bicycle as you're going along.
Yeah,
Steering
right.
to go, okay,
Yeah, exactly.
it reinforces a good behaviour, and you become more confident and stronger about the differences you're making.
Yeah, right.
And it's such a simple tool. And
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing,
Yeah.
really, yeah.
My
Yeah.
understanding is that the primary colonizers are particularly nutrition depth anyway. I heard it's part of the other day.
Yeah.
From Colorado, and they pick the weeds and
Yeah.
they dry them out and make a powder out of them.
Yeah.
Very, very nutrient.
Yeah. So this is brilliant, because that's where this takes you. If you're looking at your soils and you're looking at the plants growing there, you are connecting with them in a much deeper way, and you are asking those questions. So I've got a lovely book here, I can share it with you. It's The Regenerative Gardener, it's just come out. And so he looks at weeds as indicator plants. So I think we ought to change the vocabulary here. They're not weeds, they are indicator plants. And so it's telling you that, let's say it was dandelion. Dandelions probably, they're mycorrhizal and they're high in magnesium. So it might be that your garden is deficient in magnesium and mycorrhizal. So you can take those plants and make an extraction. So you submerge the whole thing and you make an extraction, and now you've got a magnesium-rich compost tea, which you can now put back into the soil. And actually, so that indicator plant, a dandelion, was possibly telling you that your soil is deficient in magnesium if you want to be growing these other plants. You know, so it's working like that. It's offering you feedback, and it's down to you to reflect.
Being there or not there?
Being there.
Being
Because it's drawing up magnesium from its long taproot.
there. Yeah.
Whereas other plants that are there might be, say, the lettuce, might, you know, more shallow rooted.
Yeah.
But what would the dandelion be doing if it was in a magnesium-rich soil?
It probably wouldn't be there.
It wouldn't be.
It probably wouldn't be there.
Ah, really? Because if it's too rich, it wouldn't grow, even if it wanted it.
Yeah. So that's how. Yes. I mean, this is now a minefield opening up.
Yeah.
And it's down to you in your personal journey to understand what that is.
Right. Because I would have thought if you looked at a meadow and you could see thousands of dandelions,
Yeah.
based on what you've said, I'd think, oh, there must be a lot of magnesium in that soil.
Yeah.
Would I think it would not work that way?
Yeah.
So does it mean the opposite of that?
It's
Well-
remediating the soil. So again, like you say, you can throw away the word weeds.
Yeah.
It's just doing a different function.
Yeah.
So let's say another way of looking at it is say, if the system is malfunctioning or damaging in some ways, those plants are restorative.
Oh, so
process.
in a magnesium deficit, then dandelions would establish more easily and then bring magnesium into it.
Yes,
Is that
that's
how it
what
works?
we're looking
They-
And
at.
then once it gets enough magnesium, do dandelions not grow as well there?
The dandelions will probably move on. So we're moving into succession.
I see. Yeah.
And we've talked today about starting with plants that can fix their own nitrogen can grow in very poor soils where there is no nitrogen, so they don't have to compete against anyone else.
Oh, no, right.
Hey, I've got my own nitrogen, I'm out of here.
Right, yeah.
So, the same thing then would be for other plants, is depleted for magnesium, so it has an advantage because it can get its own magnesium from a deep soil because it's got this special ability.
Yeah.
We also talked about docks tend to germinate. Docks seem to last in the ground for 100 years.
Yeah.
But if the soil becomes compacted, then they germinate. And with their big deep taproot, and as they live and die, they uncompact the soil.
Ah, right,
And then you don't need the docks again.
Ah, I see.
You go back to sleep.
Right.
There's seeds in there just in case.
Right, I see.
So again, it's just switching it round.
Right.
Rather than thinking, we must drop dock seed because they'll germinate. No, they only germinate in the conditions we provide.
Right. Look at that.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a really interesting point, because I think we can force things too much, can't we? So I've heard of people experimenting with cover crops, and they'll put down a dozen seeds, 12 different varieties, and they've observed that one year 3 of them grow, and then the next year, well, they don't grow anymore, it's another 3, you know? And what that's indicating is that each season is different.
Yeah, right.
And so this is what we're talking about. We're dealing with a dynamic living system, and why should it be the same every year? So, that's what we're dealing with. So it's always moving, it's always dynamic. And the dandelion story, at this point in time, it needs, maybe the soil's compacted, maybe it's lacking magnesium. Apparently, the relationship between magnesium and calcium can open a soil or close a soil.
Right. Yeah.
So it all points. It's an indicator. It all points to a dynamic system, and
every element in an ecosystem is somehow conspiring to catch and store and hold the nutrients in the ecosystem.
Yeah, right.
Not necessarily in the individual plant.
No, right.
So again, they're like sticking plasters or whatever. They're responses to a need. So there's been a fire with loads of potash around. So then plants that will mop up and hold that will.
Establish.
To hold on to those things too, or they're responding to, say, in a dynamic way, which actually begin to spectate.
Right, yeah. So imagine plants with taproots and things that draw stuff up from deep down. Are very beneficial. I mean, what about Japanese knotweed? It's got like roots that go down 3 meters, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know about that one, but
That would be
yeah, I
joyful,
think it
Also,
I mean, I just spend all weekend with this thing, looking at everything. See what there is.
So we're talking about systems, and I think systems have adapted and evolved to self-regulate. So when you put in something from Japan that doesn't have those regulatory functions, then then you get a predominant. So the only real, yes, you can try and regulate that by fighting back, or ultimately the system will evolve to something, it can create a niche for something to come along.
Yeah. And does it altruistically, the plant actually alters the soil so that at some point in the future that soil is not inhabitable by that plant?
Yeah, so that's
how it
works.
works.
That's what we're saying,
Wow.
yeah.
Gosh.
If they live and die, they need an ever more complex soil, which then allows
Yeah.
bigger and longer living plants to then enter into that niche.
Right.
So we talked this morning about, as the forest develops and shades out, the brambles have to move into the open land.
Yeah, right.
Because they need to get to the light.
Yeah, right.
And then as they fall over, they root, and then they create the seedbed for the forest to grow up.
Right,
They
yeah.
push out the grazing animals.
Yeah,
So they're working as a team, and then so again.
Yeah, right.
So permaculture, we're trying to see those processes and somehow work with that energy. What the natural system itself dynamically is trying to do. If you like.
Yeah. Cool.
This is really fits. This is really interesting.
So let's just pick back up. So what we've got here then, these BRIX tables suggest equalities, and these are brilliant, the metrics that go with that. These 4 metrics are what we want to work with. Complete resistance to pest and disease. I mean, that is such a powerful statement, and it is possible. We can see that. And I mean, I'm noticing also these samples of food that have come in, they haven't been damaged. They are looking, they're looking super. Better taste. Well, we've all hopefully tasted the kale and confirmed that. And so longer shelf life. It's the same thing as complete resistance to pest and disease. When a plant is not healthy, or no, when a biological organism is not healthy, it can be taken out of the natural system. And so think of your plants in the garden, and the slug comes along, you think, oh bloody hell, it's just eating my, Well, maybe that's because that plant wasn't actually expressing total health. And in a natural system, it's taken out that. Because if it can't express total health, it can't reproduce properly, it can't evolve. So in a natural world that's well balanced, that's expressing total health, then the need for pests, the need for sort of pests and diseases is reduced. So longer shelf life is similar. A well-grown plant does not rot. It apparently dehydrates.
Oh, right.
So it's not being taken out as a faulty, dodgy biological organism. That's an interesting one. What have we got next? This is the plant health pyramid. This is again John Kemp's work. So he's now producing plants that are completely, totally resistant to pest and disease. And I can't go into this because we need a bit more time here. This was me doing a BRIX testing around 2019. I've just mentioned that briefly. These were the results I got for 5 vegetables and 1 fruit.
Can I just say, I don't know if you noticed, there's Charles Darden
Oh, that's okay.
on the right. So Matthew tested Charles Darden's veg.
Oh, yeah.
How
did he do?
Yeah, right.
What was his lesson?
This thing can start right. So.
So it's quite interesting because I watched that as well. I mean, this is my local co-op, and I went to Tesco as well. And they said, "Would it be all right to test your food for nutrient density?" Well, I just innocently went in thinking, I deliberately asked because I actually wanted to raise the question, and it was interesting the response because the co-op said, "Well, write me a letter. I'll check with head office." So it becomes a sensitive issue. Tesco said, "I'm not sure. Write me a letter and I'll send it to head office." So eventually co-op came back and they said, "Yeah, fine." And they supplied me that basket of veg, which is what I was testing. But Tesco, that sort of fell apart. They didn't
course
I
not.
didn't really get that.
Yeah.
Beyond writing an article about pet foods, quite a few manufacturers.
Yeah.
Some of them just brilliant and also can be trouble. They're like, well, we'll have a tin of it.
Right.
To me. And then I spoke to Tesco's and they were like, well, I can't give you any more information on you. So that'll go well. But
Yeah.
But the decent of food manufacturers is just
They're proud.
enough. Yeah. Yeah, no, really brilliant. So,
Yeah. So I just these are some of the results. I've got the full results here. So this was me going around 2019 collecting samples just to test out this food factometer. So and you can see, you start to begin to see just from this is the top half. But the carrots I was finding all average, one good. The spinach, all in the poor category. You know, these are coming out of some good growth. And bear in mind, this is a crude way of measuring. Cherry tomatoes, good to average. Nothing, you know, I'm not finding anything in the excellent. Grapes.
Not even what's he called? Not even his.
Yeah, not even Charles. No,
Oh, right.
no. In fact, there was something really curious going on with the lettuce because it was very poor, and I think there's one average, and everything else I tested was poor.
Wow.
And so I mean, you know, that made me think maybe the calibration for lettuce is wrong. But yes,
I'd be really interested in seeing the nutrient density of these vegetables that are grown in these synthetic, like vertical farming systems, because a lot of people are hating this as this, it's like
Yeah.
the solution. And
So can we see what the nutrient density is?
yeah, hold that thought because you think about it, what they're doing. Again, it's humans feeding plants, and how much do humans know about feeding a plant? And what makes it different one season to the next? Because without that variation in quality, you know, you're not reflecting, oh, it's a wet year this year, it's a dry year next year, because that affects the nutrient composition of a carrot or a lettuce or a piece of cake. But if you create a vertical farming, you know, a hydroponic system, a controlled system, what you're producing is lots and lots of washes, all exactly the same. And I'm questioning whether that is offering good nutrition.
Well, despite our lettuce being 6 higher than the
I know it is, yeah. I haven't got the full table. I've got one other 6. I've got one other sample that's a 6. So this farm gets a big tick.
Wow, that's too good scores.
Yeah.
Yes, that's average lettuce, so that's only the second sample.
That's a 7 stroke and 8.
that Matthew
What's that
has
in there?
come across.
That's this one.
What's that, cabbage?
7 to 8.
That's the spring green, is it?
Yeah.
What was this one?
Getting really competitive.
Yeah, definitely. You feel it.
Yeah.
Right, we're going down to our allotment.
Exactly.
So this
7
is
to 8.
so this
It's cabbage. Spring
spring
greens.
greens. That you won't find spring greens on there. So you just do cabbage, and it's the same as
And
carrot.
what did you say by yours?
7 to 8.
Yeah, that's average.
What were the other people's? What were the other people's?
So, yeah.
Let me have a look. Did you notice our lettuce was 6 and yours went the highest in those bars?
Yeah.
Okay, I better go on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
let's
Well noted.
because I think we're
Okay.
probably rabbiting on a bit too long.
Yeah,
Right.
okay.
So now we're going to move into the so evolving out of the BRIX testing is the development of the bionutrient meter. So I've got one here. They've been handmade, but it's a handheld spectrometer, and what that means is it uses light reflectance, and so it's a dumb machine. It doesn't know what anything is, but it can detect the difference in the density of a carrot, for example. So how this is working, this is being developed in America by the Real Food Campaign, And we're wanting, we're bringing this project to the UK. So this now is going to be developed to build out more information about what the actual nutrients are in the food. And eventually it could end up as a handheld scanner that might end up on a phone as an app. Nice. So that the intention is to empower the food citizen and the grower to understand food quality and increase it. So the way it works is it's a dumb machine, it needs to be taught what's good and bad. So the citizen science project going on, collecting samples of carrots plus the soil that was grown in, and that's sent to a laboratory where it's then analysed for proteins, mineral elements, polyphenols and antioxidants. So you get known values of those nutrients. And then that can be tagged to the spectral signature, the scan that you get with this machine. Is that sinking in? Is you good on this? So the sample comes into the lab, scan it, that creates a signature, do all the lab testing to get all the nutrient values, and tag that to the signature. So that's one sample. Plus the soil sampled for mineral elements, soil biology, soil carbon, and organic matter. So all that data is built and put together and tagged to the spectral signature. There's two things that are happening as a result of that. One is creating a database that is demonstrating the variation of nutritional quality. So far, it's mostly American food. So this next picture is going to hopefully demonstrate. So what we've got here is on the left, we've got spinach, and it's polyphenols on the top left, okay, and in the best sample, there was, 75 times more polyphenols in the best sample compared to the worst sample, and look at where most of the samples clustered at this bottom end, yeah? So just a few samples were very high. And a similar story with the antioxidants. And what's that? Carrots on the right, again, a similar story. So you begin to see from this what the level of information that's getting picked up by developing this scanner. I think the carrots show it quite well. So it shows to the right, it shows what's possible. And to the left, where the majority is, it shows where the food supply is today. That's the majority of the samples tested.
Oh wow, so I'm taking that as some
Are you picking it up? So you come back to the BRIX tables, and you've got 4 columns, poor, average, good, and excellent. If you do in your mind a mental overlay onto that graph, you start to see a kind of, I'm seeing most of what is being grown here is poor to average. And that comes back, we know that the planet's in trouble, we know that the soil's being lost, we know that chronic degenerative diseases are going up, and climate change and blah, blah, blah. So, this one is, so it's just more of the same. This is iron in spinach, so it's 14 times more iron in the best grown spinach.
Yes.
And this comes back, that picture I showed at the front, you've got the packaging, and on the outside of the packaging is stated the value of the nutrients inside, under the bonnet. And I just question that. I used to make craft cider, and when you put it in a bottle, you make the label the year before. You're sort of thinking, well, I don't know what percent proof it's going to be, because next year it's going to have more sugar in it. That means more alcohol. So actually what you do is you water it down the next year because it's suddenly got too much sugar in it, and you've made the label. So you've got to shoehorn your product into the bottle to conform to the label, yeah?
Have you heard about, just generally aware of blockchain technology?
I'm aware, but it's not my,
I think that there is it can really help with supply chains because it's essentially a database that no one runs.
Yeah.
So no one can corrupt it or change it or take that information off it.
You can tag your veg
You
to
can
that.
tag your veg and your results to this database that's unchangeable, no one can decide to take it off.
So it adds security sort of thing.
Yeah, that will be incorporated into the app.
Yeah, well, I will add that this is being developed on an open source platform through citizen science so that it's transparent. So this is ongoing research, and a database, front-end database is being worked on at the moment. And anybody will be able to dive into that and suddenly start looking at, well, what is the carrots? You know, you can look at what the levels of nutrients are and what the highest ones are and what the lowest ones are. And the reason for doing that is to create change in the supply chain. But you do that by making it open source and allow like a horizontal learning platform where anybody interested in food or nutrition, you know, from a doctor to a nutritionist to a farmer, a grower, anybody can jump in and start looking at this information and feed in from their perspective how they understand it. You know, and in that way you open out the learning experience and increase the speed at which learning can happen, as opposed to a top-down approach, you know, where it's all done behind closed doors in a very, you know, sealed unit and then brought to market. So these are the key findings 2019 from the Real Food Campaign developing this, having tested 3,000 samples. The hydroponic and greenhouse grown produce were below the median. This is for antioxidant and polyphenols. So food, so that they were, you know, looking at farming practices. Biodynamic certified and organically certified was around the median, and organic but not certified was above the median.
Why? What do you think that's down to?
I think that's
this is like American definitions.
Yeah. Well, what is it down to? It's down to, I mean, I could go off in all sorts of directions here and spin out. It's a question for maybe over a beer now, but it's questioning the validity of our certification labels to produce food of the highest quality. They're, in my book, they're kind of underperforming. They can't offer that guarantee of what comes out at the end of the process. They can.
Yes, have never been able to be checked.
Yeah, it's not a thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
The layman doesn't know. You just go to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also the big organic farms are still using lots of inputs, and they're just trying to, you know, just substitute things that are organically sourced. So basically treating it as a mechanistic process for the purposes of creating, you know, lots of yield. Whereas most of the people maybe who aren't do jumping through those heaps. It costs money to be certified, and then you have to sort of follow the prescribed.
That's decided free
For people that are organic but not certified, because maybe they're not big enough to be certified,
And
they're probably in their back garden composting, and it's probably even better for them.
Trade-back farmers not certified organic, because they don't really need to be. Instead, they can really get into their brand and their values. So they don't have to necessarily be measured by someone else's rules. Rather yardstick, and then they can probably test higher than an organic farm. So that's basically the reason.
It's a lot. Because the amount of time and effort and headspace that's taken up in trying to comply with all the requirements for
that can be
all that time and effort can be going into actually doing something. It's just
it's reductionist and mechanistic. What I'm saying is we go systems thinking. Every bit of it matters. Everything's connected. So it isn't just about certain tick boxes. It's about your whole approach, ethos, and understanding of what you're doing.
Do you think that nutrient density correlates so strongly with having a whole system and such a balanced permacultural type farm that it's actually could be used as like a sole indicator for example, if you use that as an indicator to give people subsidies and therefore try and promote the outcome of nutrient density, is it so strictly correlated with permacultural principles and environmentally regenerative principles, but it would accurately incentivize like absolute maximum amount of environmental consideration.
I think I know where you're going with that one. In my mind, it ticks all the boxes, but I know for a fact it wouldn't tick all the boxes in the mainstream mind. It's
a good metric. But in itself, it's a feedback mechanism, so it's rewarding, if you like, the right behaviours, and by being able to identify the value of a product. So again, I'm excited to think how we can adapt that to, say, East African smallholder farmers who are actually producing really high quality food and then is swept away for sugarcane monocultures. And again, because one makes money and the other one makes nutrition, but anything that reinforces those positive behaviours, which is the theme for the day, it's about feedback loops and
So that's another interesting key finding, that farm practices that are aligned with continuous cover cropping and minimum till show results above the median. So that all points to looking after the soil habitat and feeding the microbes. And then taste serves as a useful indicator. Well, we've done the BRIX test on the kale, we've all tasted it. Can you agree with that?
Yeah, I concur.
That was
definitely.
So this is, this takes us into a new way of understanding kind of food quality, which has never ever been defined before, which is possibly why the certification systems don't work, because they've got no way of defining it. And yet, what's coming along here is a really simple tool, followed by a bit of tech, but if it ends up on a phone, we've all got one. And that means it could become market demand. So it could be that if people understand the backstory of what a nutrient-dense plant is, and they can shop on that kind of information. And I mean, I haven't talked about this really, but the whole principle behind a nutrient-dense plant is this production of carbohydrate. And when a plant has access to the correct nutrition, which we're suggesting is to do with the biology, it continues to grow unhindered. So the efficiency of photosynthesis increases. So apparently you can increase by a factor of 3 or 4 times what it would normally photosynthesize at.
Which beautifully dovetails with the biochar story.
Right.
Because it gives multiple, benefits of sort of multiples of scale. And it's very hard to explain until you realise it's because it's creating habitat for the microbes and supporting the microbiome of the soil. So.
Right, so cutting into that, dovetailing into that beautifully, this story of increased carbohydrate. So up to 40% of the plant's carbohydrate is given up to feed the life in the soil.
Right.
Yeah. So this is the more carbohydrate the plant produces, the more life. The more food it exudates.
To say the plant's constantly trading sugar to get the other organisms to do
So the food is released, and it's a recipe that changes on an hour-by-hour basis. So the plant can change the recipe of the exudates being pushed into the soil based on its needs. Remember, the plant has its own needs. So let's just say something's attacking it, or suddenly they had a downpour of rain and now it's gone hot. So the plant needs to build out various techniques to either repel a pest from eating it, which means some flavonoid or some secondary metabolite. So it can push this food into the soil habitat, and if the diversity of microbes are there, it can wake up a specific microbe and go, right, here's your food, you like this,
get busy.
And what that microbe can, the exponential rate of increasing microbial life happens pretty quickly. So in a very short space of time, you've now got an army of particular microbes that are now servicing that
specific
plant.
job that the plants activate
Yeah.
that microbe to do that job.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
So it's a little bit like an immune response,
Yeah.
right? Within, wow.
That's
So
fantastic,
it's now waking up biology in the soil on a constant basis through the day, going, yeah, I need a bit more selenium, calcium, potassium, phosphorus, blah, 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 you name it. You know, the plant needs being met because it's working with the biology in the soil, and the biology has to be there in diversity. So that all that interaction goes on. So when you get a nutrient-dense plant and you test it, you also are increasing biodiversity. So you're increasing the life in the soil. You have to increase the life in the soil to get the higher levels of nutrients. You are sequestering more carbon. So you're building life in the soil. The plant is building more life. And there's more organic matter. And we start putting in biochar because we understand that that now works. So you are sequestering carbon in the soil because you now got a higher nutrient-dense plant. The biology builds the soil structure. So you've now got more biology building better soil structure, so you reduce flooding. You don't use chemistry on the soil because that kills the biology. So you now have runoff of pollution into watercourse. So by having, by choosing a nutrient-dense plant, you are making the world healthier because that's soil improvement. Then you're bringing biodiversity in, you're sequestering carbon, you're reducing flooding, and you're preventing runoff of chemistry. So, you know, you've got all those ticks on that side of the equation. Plus, you've now got food that is packed full of nutrition that has been naturally produced by this symbiotic relationship between the plant and the microbe. So, as we saw in those graphs, potentially it's got more antioxidants, polyphenols, got more iron, got more da-da-da-da. So that relates to health of animals and humans. So when you start going towards nutrient-dense plants, you only need to really understand that if it tastes nice,
You're going the right way.
you know, that's possibly your best indicator.
Yeah.
But we've got a few tools that can help us, you know, confirm that, and that's kind of what the world needs right now. Is to get into that. So here's a concept for you. We can enjoy eating tastier plants to save the world.
That'd be nice.
Because
The last time I ever bought a tomato from anywhere that actually tasted anything,
yeah,
it's unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think I might leave it on that note. I think that's a good place to start.
Very good, inspiring.
Yes, that was a fantastic talk, Matthew. Thank you very much. The toys are here, and we'll have to be going around a bit tomorrow morning. We'll be here today.
Yes, yeah.
I'd
I'd like to see what comfrey does. We've got comfrey going up all over the place.
Yeah.
I'd like to have a look at a nettle. See what they do. You know, that's completely uncultivated here, but it grows in all the bits of the soil that haven't been touched for ages. We should really see what the soil biology is in those sort of areas.